Hello, I think we are live on YouTube, live on Facebook, live on X. All right, cool. We'll wait for people to start tuning in. I'm gonna try to get some comments on stage as well so that you guys can see what everybody else is saying. Cool. We got 2 viewers. Welcome to the AMA. This is my first live AMA. We are now streaming on X, YouTube, Facebook. Thanks everybody for starting to join. Feel free to jump in the comments. I've got those up on the screen so that everybody can see and participate. Feel free to jump in and let's start asking me anything. What questions do you guys have? I would try to keep the kitty in stream, but that is not her choice right now. So Kitty is out of stream. Kitty's name is Daisy, for anybody who is wondering. If you just joined, welcome to the AMA. My name is James Wiley. I'm the Secretary of State nominee for the Colorado Republican Party, and I'm here to answer any of your questions. So if you're able to, jump in the comments and drop me a question. I'd be glad to answer. So I'll just get started and tell you guys about, oh, okay, we got a question. Interview from Big Timber Lodge. I want to say you got my vote. Thank you so much, Michelle. I appreciate your support. I appreciate you being part of the Red Flame of Liberty team. We are going to take this election in November. We're going to win, and we're going to fix our elections nationwide, starting in Colorado. And I appreciate you being a part of that fight. Let me just share something that has been the focus of my campaign recently and part of my messaging and what's been motivating me recently in this fight. And it's the goal of restoring some degree of unity and civility within our political discourse. We've got a huge problem with that here in the United States on both sides, dehumanizing the opposite and really laying the groundwork for some of the greatest atrocities we've seen the history of the world in the past have been in the shadow of dehumanization. So we want to make sure that we de-escalate that condition and restore our country back to civility within the political discourse that as it exists. The key to that is making sure that the game that we play, the competition that we all fight in, being politics, everybody plays by the rules. And there's a perception that everybody is playing by the rules as well. And so the method of the elections needs to be designed in such a way to encourage a perception of fair use. And so we need significant reform. We've gone from a place where in the past, there was a general consensus on the methods of the elections that we conducted. Now that's changed, unfortunately, to where we might have a majority of 51% of people who think we have a good method of our elections, but that is far from a consensus. And the further from a consensus we are as a society, the greater the risk of that infighting, of that accusations of cheating and unfairness within the election process. So we need to restore it back to the condition it was previously, and that's one day in person, voter ID, paper ballot, and hand count. So sorry about that noise. Dog is chasing cat, is tale as old as time, as you can imagine. It's a small kitty. Her name's Daisy, and then Gypsy. That's the husky that's chasing her. I should mic them up as well because we're getting some fierce meows out of that little kitty. What will be the first thing you do when you get into office? I'm gonna take this kitty with me into the office, of course, and make sure it's really comfortable. And after I do that, I'm gonna decertify all the machines across the state of Colorado. We need to get it back to hand counts, and the best way to do that is to decertify the machines. But also, it would be illegal for me to certify them given the regulations placed on Secretary of States by the federal government on the quality of technology used in elections. Unfortunately, Dominion voting systems now, Liberty Vote does not meet the standards for CISA and their requirements for cybersecurity with elections. And so those machines can never have been certified. And so they need to be decertified right away. Also, I'm going to be working hard to clean up the voter rolls. If possible, I'm going to do everything in my power to bring this to a clean start. Delete the entire roll and let's start over. I think that's the best way to do it. Put that thing in our archive if we need to investigate further, we can, but we need a fresh start because it's far, far more effort to try to get in a place where the roles are trusted by removing errors, because the errors have built up to such an extent, we might as well just wipe the whole thing and start from scratch and use proper methods and continuing to curate and clean out the roles from that point forward. What else? Day one, I'm going to start this process. It's going to take a while to implement, but day one, I do want to start implementing blockchaining the record and bringing a team in to start to prepare the process to migrate all of our digital filings into a blockchain system so that people can verify the records when they were created, when they've been updated, or any changes that have been made or additions to the record through time. So getting that blockchain system in place is going to be really important. And I'm not going to forget the charitable organizations. The Secretary of State's office does regulate charities as well. And so it's going to be a priority of mine, at least maybe not day one, but within the first 30 days to really start to look into the operations of the Secretary of State's office as it relates to regulating charitable gaming, bingo, raffles, things like that. Raffle halls, bingo halls across the state of Colorado, and nonprofits such as VFW, such as Elks, such as many churches and religious organizations, including the Catholic Church, use this industry, this field of regulation that the Secretary of State's supposed to administer to raise money. That money stays in the community. That money benefits the community. And we need to go back to using a fair system of regulation for that because it's been far too neglected. Richard, it's great to see you here, Rich. Thanks so much for joining the stream. No question from me. Had to tune in and wanted to say, keep up the great works. Man, you've been a supporter and a friend and fighting alongside me for many years, and I appreciate you, Richard. Michelle, you've got another comment. Colorado elections have not been updated since 2008. How are you going to make sure only U.S. citizens are voting? Yeah, so I touched on that a little bit with the potential hope of wiping the voter rolls out entirely and starting from scratch with that. That would ensure that when people go to register for the first time now, or re-register with a fresh start, I should say, they'll have the opportunity to prove their citizenship at that point. It's not just a utility bill from an address within the state of Colorado. That's not sufficient to be able to register. You need to prove your citizenship, either bringing a birth certificate or some other kind of citizenship verification, such as a social security number, though so many of those have been distributed to non-citizens. Unfortunately, that becomes a challenge. So we do need to increase the scrutiny on that process and have everybody come in and register again. Might be a lot of work for the clerks, but ultimately it'll be less work for them to have that clean start than to spend so much time trying to remove the bad ones. That's a lot more work to remove the bad ones than it is to just have everybody re-register from the ground up. And of course, with those other components that I mentioned, the 1 day in-person voter ID, that will also remove the risks associated with month-and-a-half long mail-in ballots, which cause potential non-citizens to be able to vote. And we need to make sure that we're bringing people in person so that they have to show an ID. That ID has to match their face. That ID is a citizen ID, and it matches the voter rolls, which indicate that they're also a citizen. So there's many different things that we need to change in order to make sure that it's only citizens voting. But definitely cleaning up the rolls, definitely moving into in-person, getting rid of the mail-in ballots, checking IDs every time. That's important. Thanks for your questions. Welcome to the AMA, anybody who's just joining. I'm excited to share some information with you about my campaign, about the mission I'm on to restore elections in the state of Colorado and to get things back on track, restore unity within our political process by making sure the rules that we all play by are boring. Really, honestly, I want to bring boring back to the Secretary of State's office. So I've got some more questions. Thanks for clarifying, and it's appreciated. What else are you going to focus on besides elections? So I mentioned a little bit about the charitable gaming, and I touched on securing the record with blockchain just briefly. So let me go into that a little bit more. This is something that's going to tap into some of my other experience and skills that I've had, and also by being a millennial. Yes, we're going to bring the blockchain into the public record system. What does that look like? Well, essentially, the blockchain is a system of cryptography that allows you to verify a set of data and any additions to that data over time. Because you run a hash on each set, and when you add to that set, you run a new hash, which includes the hash from the previous set. So it's a chain of verification through time. It's used in finance, obviously, with things like Bitcoin, Ethereum, Dogecoin, all of that. But the proper application of this technology, blockchain technology, cryptography, is really, in my opinion, public records. Because what are the key features of the blockchain? Transparency and the ability to verify it. Those should be the key features of our public records, of the business filings that are submitted to the Secretary of State's office. We need to be able to verify that that's the correct filing, hasn't been tampered with, and all these other things. The principle is trust but verify. And trust is great. We need to be able to trust our government, and the government needs to do everything possible to earn that trust. I'm not saying it's doing a great job, but I'm saying that needs to be the goal. But at the same time, we need to set the objective to allow citizens who the government ultimately reports to do their own audits, to verify the information themselves, and the blockchain allows that verification to take place. So that's what I'm advocating for, is the introduction of the blockchain to public records hosted by the Secretary of State's office. It's there in a database. It's using technology already, but that technology is just, you have to trust that the IT workers in the Secretary of State's office are doing the right thing, rather than being able to verify that the record has been properly produced. So that's one of my goals, is to bring in this technology, which has never been used in this capacity before. No government has tried to adopt the use of blockchain for its own accountability. It's kind of telling. Okay, so why is this technology so hated by most governments? They'll use it for a central bank digital currency, but they won't use it to secure the records that they're supposed to be keeping. I would like to see that application. I think it's along the lines of the principles of Doge and transparency and accountability, and we need to try to bring that to our state level government as well. And it'll also be provided as a resource, of course, to the clerks. How does this work for them? Well, the blockchain is maintained by people who have the ability to contribute to it. Think of it as like curators at a art gallery. So these curators would, in this case, be the clerks. And the clerks alongside the Secretary of State would have the ability to maintain the blockchain, this record. And while businesses would be able to file their LLCs and their nonprofit status and all these other things, DBAs and the rest, with the Secretary of State's office, we would also be able to have the ability for the clerks to do their public filings within the blockchain as well. And so they could submit to the chain, for example, birth certificates, death certificates, deeds. And there's so much fraud that's taking place right now, specifically in that deed space, that I think it's important that we address it. One thing that contributes to my resume and my experience on this front that really motivates me to improve this is an investigation. I did a little bit of a side quest in 2023 where I looked into the Sinaloa cartel's money laundering operations, and I had a team of people I was working with who were investigating this and identifying fraudulent deeds that were being used for the purpose of laundering tens, hundreds of billions of dollars out of the American system. Some of this from insurance companies, some of this from nonprofit money, some of this public grants and funding from the government, some of this bank money, and from other sources like that, and taking that money and funneling into criminal organized crime. So it's not just the sale, human trafficking that the cartels are doing. It's not just the drug trafficking that they're doing. They're committing broad crime, a lot of white collar crime as well. It's not all the gangster life that you think of from the cartel with violent and all that. There's plenty of white collar crime as well. And so we see that from the Sinaloa cartel. We see them abusing the American system, the lack of transparency and accountability that exists within the public record system, and abusing it to their advantage. We need accountability, and we can secure that accountability through the blockchain. This will also, of course, apply to notaries. What was the number one attack vector for the cartel in securing its fraudulent laundering? It was notaries. Notaries who were used to officiate the signing of deeds. Fake notaries. Yes, I'm talking about stamps in Adobe PDF. Like Adobe Acrobat, you get in there, you add the notary stamp yourself, boom. That is what was happening with a lot of this laundering that was taking, and the properties being funneled to public officials. In Arizona, for example, Katie Hobbs, the current governor, former Secretary of State, former clerk of Maricopa County, interesting pipeline there. She had over $2 million worth of deeds that had been gifted to her by the Sinaloa cartel, officiated by these fake notaries. Adrian Fontes, the current Secretary of State, former clerk in Arizona, he also received over $1 million worth of deeds from the Sinaloa cartel. And this was a couple of years ago. It might be worse by now, but last time I was really invested and focused on this point, it was quite a bit. And so how do we fix that? We secure the notaries. We restore the dignity to the profession of the notary by securing their access to the chain as well. Because notaries are essentially people who are verifying something is real before it is even added into the chain in many instances, such as with deeds. And so we want to see these notaries using cryptographically verified stamps, which put unique hash prints onto the documents which are notarized when the stamp is used. Just like you can date a document with a stamp with rollers within it. This would work similarly to be able to create a cryptographic hash, like what some people use with their passwords, as well as the two-factor authentication. That hash would be a unique signature, verifying the timestamp as well for that signature that notary officiates. So that's the process essentially we need to bring into the notary regulation. We'll need some legislation for that. That's not going to be overnight, but that's the direction we need to go. Maybe a long answer and definitely not a day one process, but within 4 years, we'll definitely get that implemented. And I think it's going to save a lot of money, a lot of frustration, prevent a lot of crime, a lot of fraud, and keep a lot of money in the system. With the notaries being abused with AI, be used in tandem with the blockchaining. So AI, that's a great point. I think AI is an amazing investigative tool. It was used by Doge to investigate the fraud and waste by our federal government and saved hundreds of billions of dollars that were being wasted, and it was able to analyze the various contracts and grants and USAID and the rest, and provide a lot of solutions there. So I'd love to see AI applied to our public databases. It can be actively analyzing, crawling, as it's said in the tech world, crawling the chain and looking at entries in order to recognize patterns or issues or the potential for abuse or fraud within the chain and expose that. And so we will use AI absolutely in a fraud prevention capacity. But I do want to say I would like to not use AI for elections. I think that is a huge concern. We need to distance ourselves from the influence of AI in our elections and eliminate it entirely if at all possible, because AI, as it grows in power, will be unrestricted from access to anything digital. Any computer system used will be a red carpet to allow the influence of AI in that process. Unfortunately, with the elections, that's a concern. We need to not have AI-controlled elections. We want citizen-controlled elections. In order to do that, we need to go back to the way it's always been done. Simple enough. Another question. What's been the most unexpected thing for you as a candidate running for a statewide office? The difficulty and challenge of laundry day. It's really hard just leaving early in the morning, coming back late to be able to get laundry done within reasonable hours that don't disturb the neighbors or anybody else by using the washing machine. So that was an unexpected challenge while running for Secretary of State. Kidding. Honestly, what I've been most enjoying is the untapped enthusiasm. Yes, untapped enthusiasm that I've experienced in every corner of the state of Colorado. And why is it untapped? Because it's not connected. It's not integrated. It's not well concentrated and unified into the pursuit of a specific goal and purpose. So that is one of the duties of a candidate. That is one of the duties of a torchbearer, like the Red Flame of Liberty, like myself, James Wiley, candidate for Secretary of State, to set the tone for the uniting of the party and the uniting of the conservative movement and generally anybody who is passionate about securing our republic from potential foreign influence into our elections or other risks that exist within our elections. That should be a uniting force. That should be a uniting purpose. And so I've really enjoyed meeting people, talking to them, and experiencing that take place within their hearts right in front of me. When I tell them my message, when I tell them why I'm fighting for America, why I'm fighting for this office, and why I think that the solutions we're presenting here today and have been presenting throughout this campaign and will continue to are going to fix problems with our political discourse broadly and are going to help us de-escalate the divisiveness in our country. I'd love to see that. Things have not improved over the course of my lifetime politically in America. And it's time that we make some fundamental modifications to the system to make sure that they do start improving. So that untapped enthusiasm, people are really excited, and I'm excited to bring them together, and we're having a lot of fun with that process. Welcome to the AMA. Anybody who's just joining, I appreciate you tuning in, and I appreciate your questions as well. So jump in, feel free to ask a question, and I'll do my best to answer that. And so what questions have you got? Let me try to think of another unexpected thing. I've discovered a lot of dirt roads unexpectedly, going between small town to small town, in the back corners of the state. You'll be driving on pavement and whoop, all of a sudden you'll not be, and be eager to be slowing down. That's been unexpected and several different instances. Most recently, I was traveling from Rush, Colorado, which is at the far eastern edge of El Paso County, and the Miami Yoder School there, they were hosting a candidate meet and greet. Really great event, really great people too. And rather than going all the way over to I-25, which is about 45 minutes west, and then north to the Denver metro for the night, I ended up going the back roads. And as I'm going north, I'm going through Calhan. It's all concrete through Calhan, all pavement. Then I get north of Calhan, and boom, I'm going 50, 55, boom, I'm all of a sudden on a dirt road. And that has happened multiple times through the course of the campaign. Actually, more recently than that, just on Sunday, I was doing a hometown tour, went from Fremont to Westcliff to Huerfano County, Walsenburg, and then north to Pueblo in the evening. And between Fremont and Custer County, Westcliff, I took a back road, essentially, to cut off some distance there. And halfway through that, also turned into a dirt road. Very nice. So it's hard to plan when to wash a car. That's all I gotta say. Need a few yard signs. Let me tell you where you can find yard signs. I happen to know where you are, so you'll want to go to the Pueblo headquarters. I believe that's like 605 Main Street, something like that. Just right across from Runyon Theater. And they've got yard signs. I dropped off a bunch of yard signs there on Sunday, so they've been going through them fast. I already gave them a box for the Pueblo location, and they've already gone through a box pretty much. So I don't know how long that'll last, but definitely get down there and check the hours of operation on their website and go and visit and pick up a couple of yard signs, put some in your neighbor's yard. They'll appreciate it, surely. You guys got any policy questions, any personal questions? Want me to tell some funny jokes? That's not going to go well. Don't make me do that. Oh, we got one. James, most people like the ease of the mail-in ballot. Also, they don't realize the counting machines can't be trusted. Can you explain the problem with the counting machines? Also, the voting machines that will flip your vote to someone you didn't pick. It's happened to me. Ooh. Pineapple does belong on pizza, but only if you include mushrooms with the pineapple on the pizza. That's my favorite kind of pizza. Kill me now, I'm kidding. Okay. I'm supposed to say on a live when I'm on streams. Oops. Let me get to your question though. Mail-in ballots. So mail-in ballots are easy. But you lose a couple of different things. Some of these are legitimate security, but there is also a quality to the election process that you lose when you do mail-in ballots. Two qualities. The primary issue with the mail-in ballots is the loss of security, though. The fact that the chain of custody is compromised by the use of mail-in ballots from the very first step. When the postal worker drops that mail-in ballot into your mailbox, that is the first violation of the chain of custody. Once those ballots all get back into the Secretary of State, excuse me, into the clerk's office and are being tabulated and are going through their processes, being sorted, all this stuff, there are chain of custody strictly adhered to, where you have to sign for each batch of ballots that goes through your hands at every single stage of the process. This is a critical security feature which is totally compromised in the first step of the mail-in ballot process. Anybody else can come to your mailbox and access that ballot. They know that everybody's getting the ballot in the mail, so they know it's in your mailbox. And that is a serious risk to the process. The second risk is almost the very next step. You fill out your ballot, you take it down, and you put it in the drop box. Who checks your ID? No one. Who is to say that you are the person that you say you are and are delivering the ballot for the person that you say you're delivering it for. Hopefully just yourself. But who's to say? There is no strict chain of custody there. Nobody is signing off for having possession of the ballot and transferring that possession, either at the delivery of the ballot to you or when you deliver the ballot back to the clerk. No chain of custody. So that's a critical issue. We've got to fix that. What else do we have here in your question? Two more principles. The community aspect of it. Yes, we're all collectively participating in a mail-in ballot election, but we're not together in the process. Elections are supposed to bring together every adult member of a community together once a year or once every 2 years to make the most important decisions that they will for that period, and that is who's going to represent them. And it's important that we have that personal connection. The elections should be sacred and set apart, and conveniences of technology, the conveniences of the mail system have no reason to infiltrate what is a sacred process. Plus, when you do hand counts, and we'll get to the machine thing in a second, but when you do hand counts on the precinct level, that is local, that is convenient. You walk a couple blocks to your local community center, your local middle school, elementary school, and they have an election system set up. You vote there in person, and they count it there. I'm serious. That is simple. That is local, and that is convenient. Why can't the machines be trusted? This is, we might do a live stream just on this one subject. We really could. But let me touch on it just briefly to try to answer your question. Why can't the machines be trusted? The number one reason is they're proprietary and lack the opportunity for verification. So that's specific to the machines currently used in United States elections and in Colorado, but it's possible that you have non-proprietary election machines. And it's possible that you can audit the code and correct it and all these other things. But that is a severe vulnerability that's in place when you start to use the machines. That it could be corrupted, that it could be hacked. And as we move into the era of artificial general intelligence, right now we have regular AI, soon we'll have AGI. And AGI is just a few steps ahead. Yeah, you might say more brilliant than the majority of humans put together. That is going to not be able to be restrained or contained by any kind of cybersecurity whatsoever. And so anything that's vulnerable to cybersecurity attacks, which includes election equipment, will be vulnerable to the influence of AI. And in fact, all our election equipment now, the latest versions, in fact, produced by Dominion Voting Systems, now Liberty Vote, are built on Windows 11. Yes, I'm talking about a Dell Optiplex Tower desktop computer running Windows 11 connected to a scanner. That is what a tabulator is. Just regular Windows computer built in China. It's concerning. But the software that runs on Dominion Voting Systems has issues itself. So it's possible the machines could work, but in this instance, they don't. Why? Because the code on which they operate, which runs on Windows, which runs on these Chinese manufactured Dell Optiplex computers, is designed in Venezuela by communists. So we had communists write the code for the election equipment we now use. How did that happen? Well, because Dominion Voting Systems used to be called a company called Sequoia. And Sequoia was the name of a company formed by employees of a company called Smartmatic after the federal government forced Smartmatic to sell itself from the Venezuelan owners of Smartmatic, governmental It was a government corporation out of Venezuela that came to the United States and was forced by, for national security purposes, forced to sell to Americans. Well, it sold to its own employees, one of them being Eric Coomer, the CTO, Chief Technology Officer of Dominion Voting Systems. So we have Eric Coomer here now running Sequoia, which has to rebrand once again to Dominion Voting Systems and somehow gets purchased and ownership out of Canada for that period of time. So again, we become a foreign corporation that's owning our elections and influencing our elections. But don't worry, Liberty Vote bought them out. A Republican out of St. Louis now owns Dominion Voting Systems. And so that's something we can totally trust, which still runs in the same software produced by communists. No, this is a nonpartisan thing. I don't trust Republicans with secure elections any more than I trust Democrats, maybe slightly more, but generally over the course of years and decades, there's been no additional security provided by Republican Secretary of States versus Democrat. Take Brad Raffensperger, for example, out of Georgia, responsible for the failure of a large number of the systems within Atlanta in predominantly black precincts, disenfranchising millions of people across Atlanta when half their voting machines went out. The lines wrapped around the building. And yes, this was the 2020 election where Brad Raffensperger was up for re-election, and so was the governor, Brian Kemp. So Republicans are no more innocent, unfortunately, than Democrats for many of these things. And Democrats, unfortunately, while they have been quiet about this recently, have advocated at length for more secure elections. And so I want to come alongside Democrats who have done that in the past. Right. Better get to some more questions. I kind of got stuck on the machines. I could, again, talk a lot about machines in the future. I'm sorry that happened to you. Oh, we talked about mushrooms and pineapple on pizza. 603, Main and 6th. Love that. Thank you. That's where you can get signs. We're talking about business fraud earlier. Can you talk more about what you're going to do and what legislation you're going to push for to make sure the fraud is limited or eliminated? Yeah, the changes to the notary system to include this cryptographic hash producing stamp for notaries, that is going to be legislated for sure. That's something we're going to need to do. And we'll also need legislation for the implementation of the blockchain. We're going to need to reform the public record system generally. And so that's going to be a lot of work. I'm going to need a lot of help to write that and to prepare it and to disseminate it. And to get other Secretary of States to begin to implement the same system. We'll do the pilot. Colorado's always experimenting. We're always trying out new things. So let's try out the blockchain. Let's try that out for the Secretary of State's office. And yeah, hopefully I can get a friendly legislature. I think the principles that I'm presenting are not specific to conservatives or Republicans as far as securing the public record. Other than the general belief that Democrats support fraud, I don't think there's any reason to believe that they wouldn't support the transparency of this bill. So I think we do have a shot to get it passed in the House. Would you order county clerks to clean the voter rolls, say, every 2 or 3 years if the registered voter hasn't voted? Lots of money is spent to send out ballots and low voter turnout on midterms for off-year local elections. A couple of different thoughts on this. Somebody proposed to me that we should be requiring ballots be requested before they're sent. So if you don't request one, it's not going to be sent to you. That saves a lot of money on ballots that aren't needed. It also prevents people who don't exist from getting ballots or don't live here anymore, or died, passed away, anything else. If they're not a real person and not allowed to vote, they shouldn't be getting a ballot. So I'd prefer to just clean the voter rolls, start from scratch, and go from there, and use robust systems of elimination, like you're mentioning, to keep them up from there. If we have to just work backwards instead of starting from scratch, unfortunately that'll take a lot more resources. But we'll do whatever we have to get this done and cleaning out the voter rolls is a top priority. We're gonna get to work on day one. I've already been working on it, actually. I use a piece of software called Ellie, and if anybody wants to get involved in my team working with Ellie, I've got a whole group of people who are constantly analyzing voter registrations from different regions and finding anomalies that exist within the database and calling them out. And we've identified almost 1 million different anomalies across the state of Colorado. And that's a quarter. Yeah, a quarter of all voter registrations have anomalies associated with them that need to be investigated. So I need help with that. That's a lot of anomalies, and we need a big team to be able to do that investigation. So if you'd like to join, please go to wiley4colorado.com/volunteer and join the team. Every ballot is about $3 each. And then when you have unaffiliated voters in a primary, they get 2 ballots. So you're talking about $6. And so for we have over 1 million unaffiliated voters, right? So that's $6 million right there. Then you take the Republicans and Democrats, they only get 1 ballot each, so that's $3. And there's about 700,000 of each of them, approximately. Sorry, I haven't recently looked at that. And so we're looking at 6 million plus 3 times plus 6. At least 12 million that we're spending on mailing out ballots. Now, what percentage of those should not go out? Well, take the number I just gave. 1/4. Maybe 1/4 of the registered voters should not be receiving the ballots. In that case, we're wasting $3 million. Is this coming out of the state budget? No. This is coming out of the budget of the county clerks. They're broke. The state's broke. The counties are broke. The clerks are broke. Everybody's broke. We need to be saving $3 million per election. And this is the example I gave, of course, is the unaffiliated voters participating in a primary election. But still, $3 million every 2 years at least. And then who knows how many we would save in the general elections in November as well. We could run those numbers as well. But this is an important thing to be considering, is the cost of this. Not just to our rights, obviously, our rights, Article 2 of the Constitution, right to free and open elections under the Colorado Constitution. That's being violated. That's damages. That's cost to us. But there's a monetary cost to the taxpayer for the waste and abuse within our elections. And we've got Daisy back. Daisy has returned. Scared the shit out of me, honestly. But she's back, and she wants to be the star of the show out there. Okay, she's gone. What other questions do we have? Volunteer. Thank you, Hannah, for dropping the link for volunteer and for donation. Wonderful, wonderful. We are building a lot of momentum. The campaign is absolutely on fire, but we need more resources to do that. We need your volunteer time. We need your money volunteered to us for the sake of this fight. So if you've got anything you can give, please do so. What other questions do we have? You guys got me for at least another 15 minutes. If you can really get an interesting conversation going, you might steal me for a couple more. What other things are you willing to tolerate on pizza? Let's see it in the comments. Drop a link if you want to show us a pic. While we're waiting for your pizza suggestions, what do we have coming up here soon? Let me go over some of these details with you. My calendar is relatively busy, and I really appreciate everybody who's been a part of that process that I've seen at various events around the state. You're awesome. Starting On Friday, I'll be in Pueblo for the pachyderm meeting at the Poorhouse in Pueblo West. And then I'm going to be driving up to Larimer for the Larimer County Friday Afternoon Club, which you should all attend and see me there. I have signs with me if you need some. Then you can find all this information on my website, wiley4colorado.com. Saturday morning, I'm going to Pastries and Coffee Meet and Greet, which is going to be in Littleton. You can find the link on my website for that as well. And make sure to attend that if you're in the Arapahoe County area. It'd be great to see you Saturday morning. Then I'm going to be driving to the Madame Lou Bunch Day, which is in Central City. I was just in Central City last Saturday. I'm going again this Saturday. A lot of great events in that space. And I'm looking forward to hanging out with everybody there. Yes, so that's the next couple days. Looks like we've got some questions. So take a look at my website, check out my calendar if you want to see what I'm going to be doing. Are you going to maintain the integrity of the Information Technology Division? How are you going to gain the trust of the people with that? I'm assuming it's going to do with blockchaining. Oh boy, that department has got issues. The state of Colorado IT generally has issues. This isn't specific to the Secretary of State's office, but the governor's office, which oversees the Office of Information Technology, just fired half of its employees, basically. Half. Like, they didn't meet the standard. They were failing all their audits. They couldn't keep their security checks in place. They fired them. These are the same employees that in 2024 went out and updated the BIOS passwords on the 64 different clerk and recorders election machines after Jenna Griswold in her office published or caused to be published BIOS passwords, which is a class 5 felony. So I'm not saying those things are related, but I'm seeing a trend. I'm seeing a pattern. And those employees in the Information Technology Office assisted the Secretary of State given the workload that existed in a crunch time frame. Even the governor offered her his plane for this purpose, to fly out to the remote counties. So I don't know IT in general, how that blockchain would apply to the Office of Information Technology. It's more of a database technology. I'm sure there's databases within the Office of Information Technology that could use blockchain to improve themselves, but generally, no, I'm not sure how I would use blockchain in IT. I used to work in IT. I was a IT manager for the General Desktop Support Department in CU Boulder I was a manager for a year and I worked my way up from a tech. I was there for 3 years. You're welcome. Thank you for your questions. What is something nice you can say about Jenna? Any of her qualities? Jenna is very generous. She's always giving. She's got a generous heart. She never stops looking for ways to inspire me to sue her. I'm really grateful for that. That's one of Jenna's greatest qualities. She doesn't care about the office that she's in. She doesn't care about the job she's supposed to be doing. It's just a stepping stone for her for some other position. And so she has generously neglected her duty repeatedly on multiple different levels and willfully violated the law. And that generosity, those gifts that she gives me that inspire me to sue, nobody's been that generous to me. I've not had the opportunity to sue anybody as much as Jenna Griswold. Nobody can replace her. I'll do my best, but nobody can replace Jenna Griswold. Pueblo chili, black olives, ham, cheese, and green peppers on pizza. I'm really hungry now. You had to do that to me. Green chili, Pueblo green chili is the #1 vegetable for a pizza. Deborah says, James, I have been told the unaffiliated voters perhaps don't understand they can only use one ballot. I talked to a lady who liked a person on one ballot and another person on another ballot. She made her picks on both ballots and put 2 ballots in the drop box. Your friend's ballots are not going to count. She should have read the instructions, but regardless, it is a confusing system, and it's a system that is set up to dilute and diverge from the actual will of the people. So I've got my concerns with the open primary system, the semi-open primaries we have in the state of Colorado. Done a lot of research on that. I've done a lot of statistical analysis on that point, and I would encourage your friend to, in the future, only vote 1 ballot, and better yet, affiliate. Elvis says, how can county clerks verify a voter actually lives at said address? Here in Pueblo, there are people registered to vote at a business address and an address where they don't live. Suck at registered to vote at their parents' house or grandparents' house, but live elsewhere. I think suck was supposed to be some. Close the primaries to save money. Elvis has it right. Lots of money could be saved by closing the primaries. And the state is all in this mode of, well, we shouldn't be spending money on only partisan operations that exclude other participants. Well, we had primaries in the state of Colorado for almost 100 years, and they worked just fine. The state was paying for them then. Why would they make the argument? Don't expect logic from them. Can you tell us about ranked choice voting? Unfortunately, I can. It's a huge concern. It's a system of confusion that's being presented as an alternate for the election system that we have now, but ultimately destroys some of the key principles of politics on which the country has evolved, and will seriously undermine the opportunity for true accountability and the corrective function that elections really are. So elections allow us, when we go too far in one direction politically, to be able to correct back to the center or in the other direction to balance things out. But when you have ranked choice voting, you essentially have a dilution of the expression of the will of the individual, where they cut up their vote into different pieces and assign it to multiple different people. That's a problem. Because now you're losing, as a key principle, the division of the whole principle of elections, where each person has a whole vote that gets contributed to an election, and the body of the whole of the electorate is divided into units of one. But you round up whole numbers is my point. When you move to ranked choice voting, because we fractionalize the expression of the will of the sovereign individual within the country, the citizen who's voting, you fractionalize that. Then you have, on the whole, contributions and expressions of that will within the ranked choice voting system. That's the philosophical basis of the issues there. The practical basis is the reduction of trust generally. Because when you complicate something, when you add additional steps or hoops you have to jump through to reach a conclusion, you ultimately will remove from the circle of understanding of the process a certain number of people. And the goal with election processes is to create as much consensus as possible in the trust in the process. So when you're introducing these complications, you erode that trust, you create confusion, and you exclude people from that circle of understanding. Not a recipe for success. And the most important thing is to recognize the people who are behind ranked choice voting, people like Ken 30, the same guy who brought us these open primaries. We want him to be giving us jungle primaries like California and what they have. That's a problem. coalition building is a critical aspect of our election system as it is now, where you have winner take all, and you can have spoilers, but you can also remove spoilers through the effort of coalition building. That's critical. And that is eliminated. Third parties are essentially eliminated through ranked choice voting. Do you think we need more individuals that are holding office to be younger? Do you think age of the officials could be a reason why things are not changing? I don't think it's specific to the official positions that people are being elected to, but politics generally. We've got a problem in Colorado because of the semi-open primaries that we have. Two whole generations, Gen X and Gen Y, Gen Z, millennials, like anybody under 40, maybe even under 50, is unaffiliated. Most of them are unaffiliated. The membership of the Democrat and Republican Party is primarily concentrated between the age of 50 and 70. And that's not an exaggeration. And so 2, 3, almost 4 whole generations have refused to become a part of the political process over the last 10 years since this was brought into place. The open primary was brought into place. And so as a consequence, we don't understand what it means to caucus. We don't understand what it means to assemble. I'm talking generally. I know there's exceptions in my generation who are very aware of Robert's rules of order and how to apply them to a convention when electing candidates and officers of a party. But that knowledge largely has not been cultivated. And so we need these generations to start applying themselves politically and assembling together into parties. It doesn't have to be Republican or Democrat. It could be any party other than the Libertarian Party, any other party but that you could assemble in and get together and start to learn political processes and participate on your precinct level, on your county level, on your state level, everything. I think that's super important. And then, of course, from that pool of people, we'll be electing a younger generation of people into office as well. But I've seen a lot of younger candidates this year, and I think it's a really promising year. I think we've got a lot of great energy, a lot of great youth, and everywhere I go, I say I'm here to take over, and I'm part of that generation that is prepared to do that. Well, we are coming up on 7 o'clock here. I'll take this last question. How do we get those voters under 40 to vote like the voters 70 or older that vote in bigger numbers? Younger people outnumber the 70-plus-year-olds. How do we get the younger voter turnout? One of my plans involves using an organization I'll charter called the International Ballot Counters Association to charter chapters in the various middle schools and high schools and get them involved in the election process, turn these community centers into election centers, and get the youth involved in tabulating our votes, replacing the voting machines. I think that's how we get them to start voting once they turn 18, because they spent their youth involved in the election process. They'll want to continue that involvement instead of as a tabulator in their youth, as an elector, casting their ballot in their adulthood. And I think that's how we get people between the ages of 18 and 40 engaged and participating again. We work from the ground up. We lost the generation that used to tabulate our votes for us. We need a new generation to do that for us. And we can ask the current new generation to do that as they're coming up. And that will influence the generations older than them to represent their own generation more and turn out to vote as well. So the millennials will turn out to resist the Gen Z and all the rest, and we'll get competitive on those levels as we need to. But we're seeing a conservative revolution within Gen Z. They're rejecting the lies told to them by the left that unfortunately too many millennials drink. Well, that's going to bring us to an end. Don't forget to donate. I'd really appreciate if you would volunteer as well. Please contribute your time, your treasure, help the Red Flame of Liberty grow in power, and contribute some gas to this flame, this fire. Let's take over the state of Colorado. Let's keep liberty burning, and let's free our elections. Bring back citizen-controlled elections. Elections you can trust. Thanks for tuning in. Peace.